Ed Bernstein.
Well, if you're a hockey fan, here are two guys that you must recognize, right? Shane Hnidy and Dave Goucher.
Can I stop you? Goucher, like kosher.
Goucher.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and
he got 90 right.
I got well,
You're
look,
one
I
out of two.
was so preoccupied with Shane's name.
That
Sorry,
happens
Dave.
so many times.
No, that's okay.
Because if you mispronounce Shane's name, you're in
Yeah,
big
you're all
trouble.
Goucher, like kosher.
Goucher.
Kosher. There you
Goucher.
go. Come
But
here.
you know, in a lot of ways, people talk about Carlson and Fleury, but you guys are much more visible than either of them, right?
My question is, how did we get on the show? Like, if you had everybody else on, and then you could, well, you're down to the
Carlson
bottom
said no.
of them. Yeah. Carlson wasn't available. That's great. No, it's part of it. I think I've kind of had this conversation with people. Most, like you go to all the games, and a lot of people are fortunate enough to go to games, but a lot of people can't go to games for whatever reason. So we are kind of that conduit, for lack of a better word, their connection to the team in a certain way is through us. So I think it's something we always have somewhere in our thought process and take a lot of pride in.
I always used to joke, because being on both sides of it as a player, you always wear your helmet and you come into the rink in your suit. And I played probably more in a time where there was less social media, so you didn't have as much access to the players. So people would see on the ice in your equipment with your helmet, come off, they weren't really sure. You walk around, and I always used to joke when I went from playing to broadcasting, I said all of a sudden I became popular because people knew who you were. You're more recognizable, but it took me till I retired from playing.
And were you always, when you were playing, you always wore a helmet, or was that
Warm-ups, warm-ups
or,
sometimes. I was always scared I'd fall. That's it depends how the hair looked that day, right? For warm-up.
Because there was a time we were.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not that old.
that
Maybe Dave.
old. I remember those days.
That too. Yeah.
But you played in the days, though, so now visors, those half visors are mandatory, but he was
I was
in the day when they weren't.
And it's still grandfather. I think Derek England would be
Reeves.
Not
Does
many.
Reeves not wear?
Reeves and
Reeves
England.
doesn't.
So those would be two of the guys that kind of grandfathered in that rule that don't have to wear the visor.
And why would a guy like Reeves not wear a visor?
It's same thing for me. I had 2 serious eye injuries. I'd put the visor on, recover, and then I'd take it off. It was uncomfortable. I played in a time when, Reeves, it was the mentality. He kind of came from that time. If you were going to drop the gloves, you didn't want to have that visor there, which honestly, for protection, it would be better. You punch that, but it was just kind of an honors code maybe at that time. The game has changed a lot. It's different. I think bringing the visors and implementing that into the league is certainly the right way to move.
I think it's insane that there was a time there were no helmets. There was a time goalies didn't wear masks. Can you imagine that? Now, granted, they weren't ripping it like they do now.
Right.
A lot of the puck was kept a lot lower, at ice level, but not always. Bobby Hull got a hold of one, or whoever back in the day. Imagine standing there with no mask on with those pucks flying at you. But they didn't, it's easy to sit here now, but they didn't know the difference back then.
Now they're measuring puck speed and shot speed, and they're trying to use it in some telecasts, right? How do you guys feel about that?
Well, it's the evolution of the game, and I consider myself a traditionalist, but I think with everything, you got to realize, just everyday world, everything's evolved. I just mentioned social media, how that's new, and getting used to this, and I see my kids work it now. I'm trying to get a handle. So it's just like hockey, and analytics is a part of it. People want to measure more data in the game. I think hockey's harder as opposed to like baseball. Everybody's seen Moneyball and how they use that to find success. I think it's a good tool in hockey, but it's coming more and more prevalent in the game. So I think next year is when they're going to start the new data tracking format through the NHL. It's going to be put in, and it'll be interesting. And it is geared towards more fans. Whatever way you can bring a fan into the game of hockey, I think is a positive. So it's going to help build and grow the game.
And I think some coaches find it more useful than others, Ed. I think it just depends on what kind of cloth you're cut from. The Golden Knights, certainly, they use it. I mean, within reason. I still think they also rely on the eye test. When they acquired Mark Stone, people would tell you the analytics people loved him, how he plays the game. But you could also watch the game, and you would love how Mark Stone played.
Right. But there's also other dynamics involved when you pick up a guy like Mark Stone. I mean, you mentioned baseball. I mean, baseball is much more of an individual game. I mean, you can get a Bryce Harper and all of a sudden change the dimension of your team because he can alone can produce so much. When you get a guy like Mark Stone, it changes all the lines and all the combinations of the team. Correct? Can you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, Shane talks about guys slot in certain spots, right? And when you put him with Stastny and Pacioretty, that's one line another team has to deal with on top of the Carlson, Marchessault, Smith line. Then you get Eakin and Tuck that have 20 goals on their third line with it's kind of been a revolving winger on that other side. But I think it presents matchup problems for other teams, much like they had that depth last year. One of the reasons they went as far as they did, and Gerard Gallant would tell you this, is they played all their players. They rolled four lines. But you bring a Stone in, Shane said it at the time, he comes to that team, he's instantly their best player.
Right.
Usually you can't get those players. They get drafted by their team, they stay there for the whole careers, and they retire. So the fact that Ottawa's in the situation they're in right now made him available. The Golden Knights drafted well. They gave up a lot in Eric Brandstrom, but they had drafted well with the ability to be able to make a trade.
And he's 26 years old, so he's right in the prime. You don't get those players of that elite caliber.
Right.
And the thing I think the Mark Stone is he makes so many things better on the team. You got guys that are going to come in, they're going to give you your 30 goals, and that's it. But Mark Stone's going to make the players around him better. He's improved the power play. We've seen the puck movement with him out there. I think he improves there. He's so good defensively. He's just good in all areas of the game. And he really is an all-around player. And that's kind of what the Golden Knights want. I think of William Karlsson as centerman, great at both ends. Paul Stastny, Cody Eakin, all their centermen. And that's usually the position. Centers are usually the little more responsible defensively, but they've got some really good wingers, and I think Mark Stone might be the best 200-foot winger in the league.
I like the fact, Ed, that we talked about this when they made the trade. Even if you take it from after the Cup final last year to now, they've gone out and signed Paul Stastny, traded for Max Pacioretty, and traded for Mark Stone. They've been playing games 2 years, and they've been able to make trades like this and moves like this to really go after it.
In your opinion, do we have a better team today than we had a year ago?
I think with Stone they do.
I think so.
Yeah, with
I
Stone,
do. I believe they're better. Not only are they a better team with so basically they've changed that second line, right? You take Eric Howell has been hurt. It'd be great if he could come back, but James Neal and David Perron, two great players. Neal's had a tough year. Perron's had a great year, but I think Pacioretty and Stone are upgrades over that.
And
Paul Stastny
had a tough year.
And Paul Stastny is just a world-class veteran player that's been around, a guy that you want. The Winnipeg Jets, they beat in the Western Conference Final. That was their big acquisition, was Paul Stastny last year. But not only that, it's the players of Shea Theodore and Alex Tuck, those young players, even William Karlsson, and guys that are fitting in. The first time Karlsson played in that role as a top center, it's another year under their belt, so you're instantly better just by growth, and that to me makes the team overall better than they were last year. But we'll see what happens.
Mark Stone came from Ottawa. You played for Ottawa.
I did.
Right?
That's where I started my career.
Right.
It was my first NHL. The funny story, and we can connect it with Dave. We've told this story, and I don't know if we've told you off air, but so it was 2000, right?
Yeah, October 2000.
Opening game in 2000, my first year in the league. My very first game was against the Boston Bruins in Boston, and
who was the schmuck doing the radio? You're looking at him.
His first call.
Yeah, was that game
The first
against
call.
So we both.
We were on opposite sides, but we didn't connect the dots.
And I don't know where. I saved the ticket from that game. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere. But yeah, that was the first.
It's funny how the world of things just come around, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you have obviously two different paths to get to where you are now.
Yeah.
You were in broadcasting.
Yeah,
right?
I went to Boston University, and here we go, the
Boston,
Terriers.
he talks about
Terriers. Well, our radio announcer Dan Duva works in. He went to Syracuse, and that's like a broadcasting farm. It's almost like they just farm them out there. He mentions about Syracuse about 10 times a day, so we have to work into it. No, I went to BU because they have a real good broadcast journalism program as well. And
That's right. Howard Stern went.
Howard Stern, among others, right? Yeah. And then my junior year, I started broadcasting our college hockey games, football and baseball too, but mainly hockey, on our student radio station. And I got to tell you, Ed, nobody listened, nobody cared. They weren't missing anything. It wasn't very good. It wasn't. But
you didn't know the game at that time?
Oh no, I knew. I had played since I was a kid. I had played since I was probably 5. I grew up in Rhode Island, and in the Northeast especially, youth hockey and college hockey is huge. But when I went to BU, they didn't need me on the ice. Believe me, we're fine, Dave. We'll get by just fine without you. So I said, well, broadcasting somewhere was in my thought process that it would be fun. That was about as much. I said, well, I love the game. How can I stay involved? So I did that for 2 years. Remember the days of cassette tapes? I made a cassette tape a cassette tape. They should have, And I went to Wheeling, West Virginia for 2 years, which was the East Coast Hockey League, AA level.
You paid your dues.
Oh, and then I did the Providence Bruins for 5, so that was, 7 years in the minor leagues, Boston's farm team. And then 17 doing the Bruins on radio, including when they won the Stanley Cup.
But that's big. That's a big-time job.
That was, for me now, and it's interesting, the Bruins were my team growing up. I mean, I grew up 45 minutes away.
Right.
They were the team I watched and listened to my whole life. Then I got that job, and there was a time I thought, well, if I get that job, I'm not ever going to want to look for another one. But things change, your priorities change, your goals change. But I had a chance to call them winning it in 2011. Shane was on the team. So that made it, I had an opportunity to do that, which was phenomenal. And then I wanted to do television, quite honestly. I wanted to do something more than I was doing, and it led me here.
So if we were to play the Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good question.
How would you feel?
Well, no, I mean, I would love it because I'd be able to go back and see some people, and obviously I'd be on the Golden Knights side. I mean, I'm not a total fool. I know where my bread is buttered. But Shane ran through this a little bit because he worked the Winnipeg Jets games for a number of years, and playing them in the conference final last year was a bit of a strange dynamic.
I didn't give it a second thought. I did not want Winnipeg even to come close. I did not want them to get that far. Yeah, it was all Golden Knights.
And did you grow up wanting to play hockey?
Yeah. I grew up in a town of 3,500 people in Manitoba, so Neepawa, Manitoba, small town.
Okay.
So Manitoba, for anybody, it's straight. If you went from Minneapolis and drove straight north for 7 hours, you'd eventually, 9 hours maybe, you'd run into it. And I grew up. Sports came easy to me, but hockey certainly stood out. I played all sports growing up, and then when I was 15, 16, my junior year here, grade 11 there, I moved away from home and went and played junior hockey in Saskatchewan and Swift Current in the Western Hockey League. And I did that. I was drafted by Buffalo Sabres in '94, but nothing came of that. I finished out junior, and then I started a long process. It was certainly not the easy path. Not, a lot of people see guys get drafted by the Golden Knights and assume they're going to play, or guys that get signed out of college. It's not always the case. So I was drafted. They never signed me. I ended up starting the East Coast Hockey League in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I played a few months there, and then I got called up to the American Hockey League on the East Coast of Canada in St. John. And then the next year I played in the IHL in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I played against, that was the first time, my first trip to Vegas was playing with that team. That was back in '97, played against the Thunder.
The Thunder.
Yeah, so, and then the year after that I was finally signed to a two-way contract, which means a minor league and NHL with the Detroit Red Wings. But at that time they had all Hall of Famers. They just won 2 cups, and you never really got a chance. So I spent 2 years, 1 year in Glens Falls, New York with the Adirondack Red Wings. Next year with the Cincinnati Ducks. They split with Anaheim affiliate. And then finally my rights got traded to Ottawa, and that started my path. I made the NHL and spent 11 years there before winning the cup, and the body had enough. I was ready to get out of the game, and I had a great opportunity. That was when the Winnipeg Jets, the team relocated from Atlanta. And I thought, hey, let's get into broadcasting. I worked with TSN, which is...
So how did you do that? How did you make that transition? I mean, you go to school?
It's just
you
like
go to
anything
broadcasting
else.
School to do
No,
that?
I did not. Fortunately, the one thing I know is hockey. Not much else, but I know the game of hockey.
Pretty limited.
Pretty limited. But if I'm going to go into anything, they always say stick with what you know. So I knew hockey, and I have the ability to. I think the biggest thing, a lot of guys think they can do it, but you got to be able to translate it to whether it's listeners to viewers. You got to be able to speak. You've got to be able to do it fluently. You got to be able to do it in a manner that's people can understand, and you got to do it quickly. So I started in radio. Now I think that's the path. I started radio pretty much right out of the gate. There was no training. I literally got handed a mic and said, "Here you go."
And is radio harder because you have to
talk more.
Describe?
You have to describe. I think it's the perfect. It was the perfect area for me to start, because it really helped me describe the game. You have to learn timing off the play-by-play guy when he's gonna. Radio's a little easier because you can see him beside. He's gonna take a breath. You can jump in at that point.
Right.
But then I did that for a couple years. But then by chance, the TV guy couldn't make it, so I got thrown into it, and it was one of those things that just. Whoa. I remember going home that night and saying, "Now I know what I want to do. I want to do hockey. I want to do the TV games." And it was just because people think I talk, but I'm majority of the time I'm talking to the truck where our producer and our director and everybody's there, and I'm marking clips. I want to see this, that, and then I'm trying to listen to my play-by-play guy, and it's a lot going on for a guy who's easily distracted. it was really good for me to be that focused and lasered in, and I absolutely loved it. It went well, and then I took over full-time TV in Winnipeg, and then I loved it there. It was my my home province, but. When I heard there was a team coming to Vegas, even right when I heard it was announced, it was in the back of my mind that, hey, I didn't think it would go to the level it did in year one, but I figured there was something in me that really believed it was going to be a huge success, and I wanted to be part of it.
There's a lot going on in those broadcasts. It's funny, Shane says it, and it's kind of like, the duck on the top of the water. The legs are going like hell under the water, but on top it seems like everything's fine.
Like the iceberg.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it was, in radio, and Shane did some radio too, there's you and your partner and your producer.
Yeah.
That's about it. It's a little, at the end of the day, that's really all you have. So the biggest adjustment for me was somebody described it to me as a much bigger band. There's a lot more parts to the band. There's producers, directors, statisticians, graphics people, camera people, that, stage managers. And you're right, Shane, a lot of times during the game is talking. We have, not to get into too much technical stuff, there's a talk back button so you can talk to the producer. You hit that button and it's just the two of you talking. Right. So Shane, a lot of times, as I'm describing the play, he's watching the play, but he's also marking clips. He wants to, all right, let's show this replay, let's show this.
Does that interfere a little bit?
No, because I can't hear him.
No, you can't hear
So it's just a direct line. I have the same. Right. So if I want to get into something, I can hit the button and say, hey,
so
let's
you're watching
work on
a
that.
play, you're watching a save, for instance, and then, hey, it's a terrific save that Fleury made, so you're going to mark it and talk about it.
And our producer will talk to us too, letting us know, we should show this. The one thing I like is, if there's a goal, I'll be on right away and I'll say, well, that goal, I don't want to see just the last two plays. I want to see back in the defensive end, somebody made a great hit and then a good breakout that started it. Take it back there, and I got to do it quickly, and then it shows up, and you got to be able to talk through it. So I like the speed that everything happens with. And then when I'm between the benches, there's a different dynamic because we can't see each other. So I've got to know there's chemistry that him and I had to build up to know when it's time for me to jump in and say something and when not to.
And I will tell you, and it's funny, people have asked us this, so Shane and I knew each other from his time in Boston, but we didn't, he was a player, I was the radio guy. We didn't really hang out at all, that's how it is. And then we saw each other a couple times a year when the Bruins would play the Winnipeg Jets, but we had never, ever sat next to each other in a booth until the first preseason game we did last year in Vancouver. So we flew up in the preseason, they fly up day of. And we flew up, busted the rink. Okay, here we go. We had both literally, I had only been in town.
Yeah, we'd only been here maybe
3 weeks. We had just got here because we had hired in early August, but then, you got to move, everything else. So we did the first period of the first game against Vancouver. Right. No, it's a preseason game. And I got to tell you, by rule, preseason games are not. They are what they are. They're not that, they're not that enjoyable for, guys like us. But whatever, you do it. It's part of the game. And for us, it was important to get some games in. We hadn't done anything. So we sat there after the first period of the first game and kind of looked at each other and we're like, wow, that's better than we probably thought it was going to be.
So you had some chemistry right away.
It was instant.
Yeah.
Instant.
It really was. And you never know. So usually, and not that it wouldn't have happened, but usually it would have, I thought maybe a couple games in, but it was, after game one, I remember, we looked at it. Okay, I guess we're set.
Well, we'll see where it goes from here.
This will work.
Nowhere to go but down.
Anyways, we'll see what everybody else thinks.
How difficult was all the moving you have to do as a player and as a broadcaster with your family?
Well, he hasn't moved much.
Yeah, he's moved a heck of a lot more than I have. Yeah.
So, I kind of listed my path, and I did that with 4 kids. So, it wasn't always 4. It started with 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, but didn't have a quartet
so
right off the
obviously,
bat.
my oldest child, who she's back in Canada going to university, she moved the most, but she's settled now, and it is difficult. People don't realize that. They always, I don't feel bad, but people always talk about trades. Oh, you should just trade this guy, trade that guy. They don't realize that you're trading that guy. You're probably might be trading some kids who are just in a school. They've been there for maybe 3-4 years, and now they got to jump up and move, and a wife that's got friends and knows her doctor and where she's going for everything, and pediatrician, and you're familiar. All of a sudden they got to pick up and go. You don't say, well, not on the way say, well, you go ahead, I'll stay. No, it's
a package
maybe
deal.
sometimes it does, but that wouldn't be ideal. So yeah, a lot of credit to the hockey wives, the girlfriends. But they understand that's kind of that's the nature of the business.
And even when you're playing with the AHL or WHL and you get called up, it's like in the middle of the night you're jumping on getting dressed, jumping on a flight, and it's
that
totally
happened to me when I was in Ottawa, because during the year they sent me down. So I was going to go down. I remember I hadn't seen my wife and child, and I went and got them from Winnipeg. I drove to Grand Rapids, and by the time I got to Grand Rapids, I'd been called back up. So I had a trailer with furniture. We pulled up to the apartment we rented. I unloaded the trailer. I gave some cash, and I said, see you later. I had to go to the airport and fly. And I didn't go back until, I think that happened in the beginning of November. I didn't go back until before Christmas. They obviously flew out and came and visited me after a week and kind of left there, but we never ever lived in that apartment.
Well, hopefully you guys have a contract and you'll be here for a little while.
Hopefully.
We'll find out.
We'll find
Day to
out.
day like everybody else. No, it's been great. It's funny. You think about, and it's easy to sit here now after them playing 2 full seasons, but I say, well, but we could not have imagined it would work out like this. But I think we both were up for a new challenge and a new adventure, and that was part of the reason that we came here.
Yes. For
sure. But to have them do what they did last year right off the bat, and to have them be a contender again this year, there's other cities. I mean, if you took a look around the NHL, there's cities and fan bases that would give you anything to have a team that has a legitimate chance to make a long run towards winning a Stanley Cup. So we're pretty lucky.
I've always been one to jump at opportunity. Like, we were both, Dave from Rhode Island, Boston. That's me. I was from Manitoba, working for the Winnipeg Jets. We both could have been there for the rest of our careers, but there was something about Vegas. There really was, to me, and I think both of us felt it. And so you take the job, right? And you're leaving family behind, extended family that's all there for both of us in the situation. A lot of people, my family, go, why? But I said, there's something. And then as the year went on, I just remember we'd look at each other and go, could you imagine if we turned this down?
If we stayed where we were.
I would be going crazy.
Yeah.
So who do you meet with? Carrie or
so they had a whole process.
Yeah, they had a lot of people. We heard
Eric Tosi
upwards of 200 people that were after these jobs. And Eric Tosi's our boss, our vice president of communications.
But it was him and Kerry Googles, I think Bill Foley and George McPhee, Kelly McCrae. I think everybody had a...
They were pretty...
So after you met with them, was that reassuring to you? Hey, this is really a place I should really...
Yeah, well, Eric, we knew Eric Tosi because I worked with him in Boston for 10 years, and Shane played there, so he knew him from there. And I looked anyways at the people they had in George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon, and I knew some of Kerry's background. I certainly knew Eric. The people there that I respected, that I knew they knew their stuff. They knew what they were doing, and that was a big draw to me. That I knew those people and their backgrounds and had a lot of respect for
them. And I think Bill Foley, when he put together his organization, there was a certain type of people. There's the no ego. We've heard that all before, that he wanted, not only through his organization but through the team, and he's been around a long time. He knows how to hire people, and really it just kind of the trickle down effect. Everybody there, it's an amazing place to work, and it's great calling the games. It's a city that I loved before, but now that I know more about it, absolutely love living here.
You would know this better than we would, certainly, because you've been here for a long, long time. But people, and I've only been here a year and a half. The feeling I get is people wanted their own team for a long time.
Oh, for sure.
Their own identity, their own team. And I think it's fantastic. I mean, we can't go 5 minutes without seeing a Golden Knights hat, T-shirt, whatever. And that, to me, is... The big change for me was, there was a lot of changes, but in Boston, there's 4 teams, right? You get the Patriots, Bruins, Celtics, and Red Sox. Right. That's a lot of competition for the sports media landscape and for coverage. The Golden Knights are the only game in town. Now, the Raiders are coming in a couple of years. That'll be great. And we have a beautiful new AAA baseball stadium for the Aviators, which is great. But right now, major league teams, the Golden Knights, have the whole canvas to themselves. And the fact they've been able to do what they've done in 2 years is remarkable.
Amazing. It's amazing. And I describe the difference between the Knights and the Raiders as the difference between giving birth to a child and getting a stepchild. Right? Because we created this from the beginning. But let's cut to the chase. Okay, we got playoffs coming.
They're going to win the cup.
We're going to win? I want to hear your predictions.
Well, I like their.
Okay, let's start with San Jose.
I think, Ed, in the West in general, there's no team you look at. There's no Tampa Bay in the West. You look at Tampa and you say they're by far the best team.
Right.
I like their chances against San Jose. They played them recently in their last meeting of the regular season. It was heated. You could tell they knew they were going to be playing again in a couple of weeks. Not crazy about San Jose's goaltending.
Lost, what, 9 of 10?
Their
only win in their last 10 games was against the Golden Knights.
Vegas. If they get Marc-Andre Fleury back to where he should be, which is a huge,
that's
no
the major
kidding.
piece.
But it sounds like he'll be fine. They've activated him and probably play one of these final 2 regular season games. I like their chances against everybody in the West. They've had their issues playing in Calgary. They've been blown out there the last couple of times, but I don't know how much bearing that has once the playoffs start. Right. So my point being is I like their chances against anybody in the West. There's no team that jumps out at you.
Repeating as Western Division champ.
It's hard.
I've learned never to predict the future, but if I'm to analyze, which I'm supposed to do, I like them against San Jose. I think San Jose's got a lot of scoring power up front. I think they're very, very good set of forwards. They're deep. They've got some really talented offensive defensemen. I think they have some gaps defensively, and I think their goaltending, unless it can turn around majorly, has been their biggest problem all year. I think they're 31st in save percentage this year as goaltenders. So, and then that doesn't fall just on goaltending. That falls on defensive play. So the Sharks right now, they've gone through a tough stretch. I like Vegas. I think, and you hear Gerard Gallant talk about it all the time. If they play their game, so if they can execute their game plan, that's what it comes down to, the players. Every team has a game plan, and the X's and O's very minor between each team. It's maybe terminology. So whoever can execute their game plan better will win. And I think the Golden Knights have a deeper team. I think they know what it takes. They've been there before. If they stick to it and play their style of game that we know, the Golden Knights game, and they have Marc-Andre Fleury, that's the big key.
Hey, Vegas is about to get much more interesting, and hey, you can catch these guys on AT&T Sportsnet. It was 313, the channel?
I think so.
It's
I don't know. I
That's a
just
great
hit last.
question.
I just hit last.
Goucher, Shane Hnidy, thank you very much. Hey, we're going to do this.
I hope
do this,
so.
yes.
Fingers
The
crossed.
cup. The cup.
Yeah.
See you at the
We're going to
game.
get you another ring.
Yeah, well, I'd like that. That would be great.
Okay.
Plenty of room.
See you next week. My daughter Dana fought a long battle with Crohn's disease before passing last year. Max has spent a lifetime scoring goals.
It's our goal to help the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation find a cure for this horrible disease, so no one else's child has to suffer like Dana did.
Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis may be unfamiliar to you, but there are currently over 3 million Americans suffering from both. Join Max and I in scoring our goal to find a cure.